It is the holiday season, the season for peace, the season for love, the season for bliss, and the season for a joyful you. And I am just so deeply honored and excited to have the creator, author, Dr. Barbara Spang Minisker of the JoyfulU project. Is it a project? Is it a program?
It's a nonprofit organization and a program and a book.
Yeah, there we go. And it's all encompassing about mindful living and just in the personal and the professional life. And that's what I kind of like about your take on mindful living and living with purpose and resilience and happiness and joy and fullness and all of the above. So welcome, Dr. Barbara, here in the West Studios. And as I said before, that she originally appeared on Higher Ground with Eunice Buckner Boone. About what?
A couple weeks
ago, yes. And so I snagged her from Eunice to come into the studios this morning for the next 2 mornings because I was reading her book and well, I already knew from the moment that I spoke with you that I couldn't just interview you in a 30-minute segment, that I had to do 2 parts to an interview. So I knew that from the very beginning. But then after I read your book, I'm like, yeah, because I've never tabbed a book so much in my life.
Awesome.
And the only reason why I use tabs is because I don't like to market my books, because sometimes I share my books with other people. So I don't like to highlight a whole lot of stuff because I don't want my views or judgments or whatever, opinions, or I like this phrase or whatever, if I lend my book out to someone else. So I'm always tabbing the books. So there we go. That's me in a nutshell with my books. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can actually see something for a change. So anyway, Dr. Barbara,
thank you,
professor.
Just Barbara is fine.
Yeah, well, and even just professor of engineering.
Correct.
Yes, and so you are engineering at U of I, correct?
Yes.
Yes, so you're an engineering professor at the University of Illinois. So give us a little background about yourself and your work.
Yeah, so I have struggled with stress and stress-related illnesses my whole life, really. But it really hit the fan when I started getting to college and then getting out on my own and working in a series of pretty high-stress jobs that were very demanding. And for the past 18 years as a professor at the University of Illinois, some people think, the ivory tower, it's really easy. In this day and age, it's really being an entrepreneur and running a small business and getting that up and running and working a lot of hours balancing everything and raising 2 children. So it was very stressful, and I struggled a lot, had a lot of chronic issues health-wise. So that's really what led me to discover the techniques that are in JoyfulU.
Wonderful. And as an engineering professor, was it kind of hard when you morph into the new age mindfulness and meditations and all? Because when I think of engineering, this is my personal opinions, but in my personal opinion, when I think of engineering, I think of something that's very structured, very calculated, and very detail oriented. And so when you kind of go into those new age philosophies, it's kind of, interpretive a lot. So how was that morphing or even integrating the two, engineering and this mindfulness, new age, inspirational?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, there's a lot of stereotypes about engineering, and engineering is changing because it's becoming, soft skills are becoming more and more important. And actually, our alumni tell us that what makes the difference between a leader in engineering and someone who's just one of the masses is their soft skills.
Oh, wow.
And everything I'm doing in JoyfulU is really about soft skills, life skills. So I decided I was kind of keeping the two separate, but I realized that I needed to integrate JoyfulU into my teaching. So I'm going to be doing that more and more next semester. I'll be doing that with my students.
Oh, wonderful.
When I get back from sabbatical.
So to get into that softness you speak about, and think about the contrast, the hard and soft. Once again, it's about the yin and the yang, the balance.
It really is.
The balancing of the hard and the soft, the light and the dark.
Yeah. And I think of myself now, I like to use the term a Renaissance engineer, someone who understands the technical but is able to handle the soft side and the interconnections of engineering with so many other areas.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. So this is what sparked the JoyfulU program and book. Did you write the book first and then decide to start the nonprofit organization, or was it all kind of coming together all at once?
So what happened was I had learned these amazing techniques, really transformed my entire life. I went into it working on some leadership issues I was facing, but everything shifted and I was so much happier. But I still saw people around me who were suffering, and I wanted to be able to share that. But I started out writing for professors, and my first book was The Joyful Professor. And that came out in 2010, and that was when I founded JoyfulU. Was actually after I wrote the book.
Oh, okay.
And then last year I decided it was time to expand beyond professors. I've been doing workshops at universities, but it was time to broaden it, and so I started writing the new book and then creating the programs to go with the book. So both the books were written to be guides. To go with these hands-on workshops where we allow people to roll up their sleeves and work on their lives.
Oh, goodness. And what are some of the techniques or some of the broad spans of subjects that you cover in your programs?
Yeah, so there's three facets to it. The first part is really about setting your compass, deciding what direction is it that you want to take your life in, and then following that direction. And doing it with mindfulness, which really means being in the moment, and with resilience, which means life is probably not going to hand you what you were hoping for. So how are you going to bounce back from that and stay on the path that you wanted in the long run?
Oh, goodness. And in part of that, you talk about soulful values, and that's one of the things that you cover in your book in the first couple, pretty much in the first chapter, which is page 21. You talk about the common soulful values as kind of like discovering these soulful values as kind of the first step. So can you give us an expansion on soulful values? What are soulful values? Define the soulful values and why they're important.
Yeah, so this concept of soulful values came from Jan Smith at the Center for Authentic Leadership, which was the first place where I started doing this life transformation. And the concept is that they're really core values that everybody needs. There's a list of 9 of them. Everyone needs all of them. But we all have 3 or 4 of them that are just our to die for soulful values. And in my case, to give you an example, it's making a difference in contributing in the world, which is why I do JoyfulU. The second one is learning and adventure. So JoyfulU is also about learning, but also adventures like being on live radio, being interviewed. That's an adventure. And workability and feasibility, being able to be manageable. So those things I have to have in my life, and I have to have them on a regular basis, or I start getting really antsy and unhappy.
And how did you come across these soulful values for yourself?
Yeah, so we start, it's really detective work with some clues. We start from what is it that you love to do when nobody's watching and nobody's paying you. And from that, tease out those clues, and we did some of that on the other show for you. And it's a really fun process. beyond what you love to do. It's also maybe about the career and life choices that you made, and some of it is also just gut feeling and observation, because over time you watch your life and you see, I think maybe it's this one, but let's play with that a little bit and see if that really, if I crank that one up, is that going to make me happier? And you'll know it when it is the right one.
Yes, and also when we are talking about soulful values, what happens when someone says, okay, I don't know what I love, so I can't identify my soulful value, which is what I said.
That's
I'm
right.
like, I have not a clue anymore. I just do.
Yeah, and that's actually a pretty good clue when you have no idea that maybe you haven't been taking care of your needs for a while. So I always tell people to think back to an earlier time in your life when maybe you had more time, and even perhaps when you were a child, what were the things that you just loved to do, and you did them with passion. And children do that, so it's great to figure that out. And part of that too is just listening to your heart and finding the time to listen to that voice of inner wisdom and hear what it has to say, and it'll guide you if you quiet and listen enough.
Oh my goodness. And yes, we are going to expand more on that, because that is mindfulness and meditations and so many different techniques. And so we're going to expand upon that on the next show next week, to get more into that quieting of your mind, so you can get in touch with your soulful values. That's right. Those soulful values. And I just lost my whole entire that's what I get for being on the phone. So as we're morphing into the soulful values, I just even want to just go over a couple of them. You were saying that some of your soulful values were desire for workability, feasibility, efficiency, wanting things to go smoothly, move along, and have things to be efficient and effective to achieve the desired results. I know, and then another one, adventure. And it says, this is a desire for learning, expanding, curiosity, and adventure, naturally loving to grow, learn, and discover new possibilities, moving and expanding, trying new things, exploration and adventure, living on the edge of the unknown. I don't think I'm that courageous. I don't know. Maybe so. I'm doing a radio show and a television show, so maybe that I am living on the edge.
Yeah, you probably are.
Yes, I probably am, and just don't understand it. I know one of mine that I was thinking about as I was reading your book was the desire for free choice, freedom, and spontaneity. That really resonated to me. And it says in this one, this is the number one in this common soulful values, feeling the freedom to ask questions, say yes or no, having the choice to contribute in a manner that works for you, having the freedom to choose many options, feeling free and feeling independent. And I had realized for myself that I limit myself a lot. And so that desire for freedom and that desire to be able to just get up and go and do something, I've kind of lost over the years, especially when you're dealing with a child that has autism, on the autism spectrum, because you have to have so much structure, and change is such a difficult thing for them. You really can't just, okay, we're gonna go this place, or I want to do this, and then just, as society, we have to have filters. But I think I filter my filters or something, so to a point of where I don't always say exactly what I feel or be very clear on all of that. So that was one of the values that kind of resonated with me in those out of those 9.
Do you remember what your others were?
I have to go back to the tape. I was going to play some of it next week when I go back to it.
I didn't write them down, so I'm afraid I've forgotten which
I
ones
think one of them, I think you picked up on like desire. No, it was Eunice who picked up on number 6, the desire for learning, expanding, curiosity, and adventure.
Okay.
Because I always wanted to travel, and I love traveling, and I love going to different places and sightseeing and all of that kind of stuff. And for once, I'm thinking of number maybe 8 might have been one we were talking about. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that next week. Yeah, we're jumping ahead. We'll get to that. And we'll never get to the questions, which I didn't plan on it anyway. But anyway, we will kind of touch more on the soulful values as we're talking about mindfulness and meditation and being still and getting in touch with your heart center. So soulful values definitely will come up again in the conversation. But as we are moving along, and I'm doing a lot from your book, as opposed to the program, which we are going to talk a lot about too, but you start talking about goals, and that's something that is very important to people, but I don't think that we always understand what goals are and what goals should mean to us. So please elaborate and define what you feel goals are and how we integrate that into our life.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that particular question, Renee, because I find that when I do this work, people who have that soulful value of freedom often struggle with this part because they feel that the goals tie them down.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. I'm like, I don't want to do any goals. Or also for me, it's not only that they tie me down, but sometimes I also feel like that I never reach my goals. So something always comes in to disrupt it. And lately it's been really major things that just completely knock me down. So that's very interesting that people who want freedom have trouble with goals.
That's right. And the thing first of all, these goals are just for you. They're there to help you decide what direction you want to take in your freedom. Mm-hmm. So in a way, by helping you to focus on what's important to you and what direction you want to move in, you're giving yourself more freedom because you're going to get rid of a bunch of other stuff that's not so important to you.
Yeah.
So that's the part to keep in mind, that you're not constraining yourself. In fact, you're opening up possibilities by creating these goals, and that we hold the goals lightly. They are a guide to what we think is important, so that we're not just whipped around by whims or by other people's agendas.
Yes.
We know what we want and can continue to move that forward, but there's many, many ways to meet a long-term vision. So in the case of JoyfulU, there's many ways that I can help people to learn and grow and address the issues in their lives. And I'm not holding tightly to any one way. So as I do this, I see what works, what doesn't, and then I shift over time. So that's an important part too. Sometimes goals don't work out. But when you're talking about soulful values, there's a million ways in the world that I can make a difference. So I'll find another one. You know, it's so creative, the possibilities.
And how do you combine and integrate soulful values with your goals?
Yeah, so what we do is to first figure out what the soulful values are, then figure out what we want to get from our lives. We do some visualizations on what we want our life legacy to be, what we want our ideal life to look like, and then begin to set some long-term goals. Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? What kinds of things do you want to move towards? And then go back from there to short-term goals in the next 1 to 3 years, and then setting those out with some specific targets of I want to do this by this date. And sometimes the goals can be pretty mushy to begin with, so you might have an idea that there's this big thing you want to pursue, but you really have no idea how to do it when you're first starting. So then you break it down from there into very short-term tasks that are very manageable and doable. So the first thing might be to do some research and talk to other people to figure out, how am I going to do that big thing that looks really cool to me, but I have no idea how to take it on. The other thing is there may be parts of your life that you need to let go of in order to make your dream happen. So you can set some goals about letting go of that piece and how am I going to do that? And sometimes that takes some creativity, some requests to other people.
Yes. And what are some of your long-term goals that you had to expand and talk to other people with or engage other people with when it comes to the Joyful You?
Yeah, well, when I first started, I had no idea how to make JoyfulU work. And especially this kind of work it requires that people have a faith that I can help them. And especially people who are really, really busy, and I'm asking them to take time out from their busy lives. And they have to have some trust that what I'm going to be teaching them is going to be worth that time out. And building that trust takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I had to call in some help from, advisors of all sorts as to how do you build trust? How do you build a group of people that are interested in what you're doing and willing to plunk their seats down for a weekend retreat and spend that time with you and invest their resources in doing that as well. So that's just an example of when I first started, big overwhelming job. Holy cow, how do I do that?
Right.
Taking it, breaking it down step by step and getting some really smart advisors to help me out.
And were there pieces of your life or experience that you had to kind of shed so that you could make room for Joyful You?
Yeah, I'm shedding things all the time. So there's been my love of adventure. I love to do things outdoors, go on crazy, wild adventures. And to get JoyfulU up and running, I have to stay home a little bit more. And that's one thing I'm struggling with right now is how do I keep my adventure yen happy and get JoyfulU off the ground? So I'm looking for small ways that I can find adventure in my life to try to, find that balance and maybe live with a little bit less adventure for a year or two. Because ultimately I want to take JoyfulU out on the road and we will have adventures together in our retreats in really cool places. So that's my goal. But first I have to establish the community that's willing to come with me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are morphing into, as we're talking about JoyfulU, and I just want to say this is 90.1 FM WEFT Champaign. I'm Renee Angela, and I'm here with Barbara Spang Minisker, Ph.D., Professor of Engineering, and we're talking about the JoyfulU, her book, Discovering the Path of Success and Happiness, Mindful Living with Purpose and Resilience, and of course the JoyfulU nonprofit organization as well. And we're talking about goals, and we're talking about values, and we're talking about shedding, and we're talking about organizing. And in that, she has a wonderful example that I love. It's almost like a parable to me. And it's about a mayonnaise jar. And I am going to let you explain the mayonnaise jar, and then of course if she actually brought the jar, and we're going to videotape it as well, so you'll be able to see it on Health and Soulful Being on Sunday evening at 9:30. So the mayonnaise jar, a metaphor for life. Tell us about the mayonnaise jar.
Sure, yeah, I'm going to move the jar over here.
Yes.
And
I'm just going to do a little close up.
Okay.
while you're explaining it.
All right. So the original story that's in the book is about a philosophy professor in a mayonnaise jar, but as I've started doing these live demos, I've modified it so it's now the engineering professor and the canning jar, because engineers are more practical than philosophers, and think how much mayonnaise I would have to eat to be able to do these demos, because we hand these jars out to people. And I actually have a jar for you.
Well, my goodness, thank you.
You're welcome. You can have your very own
I have my
JoyfulU
very own
canning jar. And I will tell
From
you more
the
about
JoyfulU
that
professor.
when we're done.
All
So,
right.
This is my jar, and so the first part we start with is a question. You can see, well, the radio audience can't see, but my jar is full of rocks. They're about, 1 or 2 inches in diameter. And I would ask, is the jar full? Now, Renee, you're going to have to play along here like you don't know the story.
Okay, I will play along.
Is the jar full, Renee? Oh, she's offline, but she's,
I'm getting back.
okay.
I'm online now. Is the jar full?
Yes.
Now,
Is the jar full?
I would say at this point, no.
It's not full. Well, you're right, it's not. And the reason it's not full is because we can fit some more in the jar. And so our 2-inch rocks, we're now pouring in some pebbles from Home Depot, and they're sifting in around these rocks. The pebbles are, what, maybe a 1/2 inch or so in diameter?
Very, very small. You know what a
Yeah, and
pebble
you
is.
have to kind of work at the pebbles to get them to sift all the way down to the bottom, and I'm not going to take that time, but you'll have to trust me that they would if I worked at it.
You just shake it.
Shake it, yeah, shake it some more, but we don't want to take the time
And they'll go down.
So let's imagine they're all sifted
Okay.
down, and now, do you think the jar is full?
No, I do not believe the jar is full.
She's a tough one. See, most audience would be saying yes, at every
Yes.
point. I
But
find when I
when-
do this with farmers too, they don't buy it either.
Well, maybe I missed my calling. Maybe
You
I
might
need to be a
have,
farmer.
Renee, you might have, because it is really not full. We can add some sand, and that's what we're going to do. The sand goes in a whole lot easier than the pebbles.
Yes, it does.
And it sifts right down in there, and it will fill in all those cracks. So now, when we get it all full up with sand,
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm on the beach.
yeah. I grew up near the beach.
That's where I long for.
I do
So
too.
sand and pebbles and rocks
Sand,
and seashells in the ocean.
Okay, so now what do you think? Is it full?
Okay, I will say yes here.
All right. You're right, you're getting close, but it's actually not full
It's
yet,
not
because
full, guys. We've got rocks,
one more
we've
thing
got
to
pebbles, we've got sand, and it's not full.
go. It's not full.
Okay.
Because we've got a cup of coffee.
We've got it. She's pouring a
And
cup of coffee.
Woo, we're spilling because I'm not a very good pourer. Yeah, we're making a little mess here in the studios.
Well, that's quite all right.
But the coffee's going in, it's gurgling a little bit.
And it's going down.
There it goes. So the canning jar here is a metaphor for your life. The rocks are the things that are really important to you, like your health and your loved ones. The pebbles are the things that are less important, but still important. So maybe your job, your home. And then the sand is all the other crap that we have to deal with.
I love that.
And the coffee is, no matter how full your life is, you always have time for a cup of coffee with a friend.
There you go.
Yeah.
I just love that
Yeah.
example. The rocks, the pebbles, the sand.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you always have room for a cup of joe.
That's right. So what happens is you have to put the rocks in first, the way that I did here. Because if you don't, and you fill your jar with the sand first, then you've never got room
For your rocks.
for those rocks. I'm not going to pry that out there, but you should get the idea. I can't put the
Yeah.
rock in there because there's all this dang sand, right?
All the
So you
stuff that
have
doesn't
to-
matter.
Yeah, you have to identify what your rocks are. Focus on making room for those. And then the other stuff will sift in around and make it happen. And then always remember the coffee.
And for me, coffee relaxes me. So
Yeah.
I always try to
Yeah.
remember some coffee. That is so great. I love the whole metaphor
So
of the life.
The
So
jar
for
for
me,
you have, this is what we do in the introductory program.
I have one pebble in my
You
jar.
have one pebble, and I'm going to give you a Sharpie so
Oh,
you can write
in the
on
canning
that
jar.
pebble one rock in your life that you want to remember to make sure that you spend time on that.
Oh gosh, now this is where I've been having the biggest problem as I was reading your book. Identifying what my rocks, my pebbles, and the sand is, because I think everything is a rock.
Yeah. The hardest thing, I have an easy time with the sand. The hardest thing is distinguishing the pebbles from the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I find over time that I shift more and more things to pebbles. I begin to understand my rocks better and better. But this is where the retreats are really helpful, to take some time out from your life and relax and brainstorm and really tap into that deep voice to figure that out. Your soulful values are your guide to the rocks.
Okay.
So you're looking for the clues, and it's a process that takes some time.
Yes, I think for me, one of the most important things is creativity, because I feel like that a lot of my health issues are because lack of creativity. So for me, I have to be creative, and I'm a tactile person, so I've always got to have something that I'm working with my hands on. So I'm learning, as I had went through the cancer journey, that was one of the biggest things is, once again, the suppression of the creativity. So for me, that's a very important.
There's that soulful value of passion and aliveness that comes out with the creativity. So there's a question that you'll need to ask yourself is, how am I bringing creativity into my life? And how can I bring more in? And I had the same issue with adventure, where Jan Smith, that I mentioned earlier, my leadership coach who taught me about this stuff, she said to me, you're doing a great job with adventure in your job, but in your personal life, you got to beef it up if you want to be happy. And I looked at her and I said, what are you talking about? I don't need adventure. And then I thought about it some more, and I thought, wow, maybe she's right. So I started trying to figure out how I could do that. And Champaign-Urbana is kind of not the best place to find adventure.
Right.
Because I like to do physical adventure outside. So I actually got creative, and I said, okay, I'm going to take up rollerblading. And for a few years, I was winging around Meadowbrook Park with the helmet and the knee pads and flying around. And then I had a few close encounters with toddlers, and I decided maybe I needed to find some other ways to feed my yen for adventure. So I'm still, that's something I constantly work on, is figuring out how to do that.
Right, it's bringing in the adventure in the Midwest.
That's right.
Where there's all these rolling hills, it's not the mountains. And
well, there's some pretty good adventures, maybe half an hour to an hour away we can find some green spaces.
We are
and
like
hills
center.
And,
So
but you got to get out to do it, and that takes some time.
Absolutely. Well, goodness, speaking of time, see what I was saying? Half an hour was not enough time. So we haven't even touched on mindfulness and meditations. And well, I guess we did touch on it. We just haven't gone further.
Briefly.
Yes, very briefly, which is what we wanted to talk about, what I want to talk about with you next week, and get more into your process for your programming. So definitely, you'll be back next week.
Sure will.
Same time, same place. And I thank you for coming in and showing us. I'm glad we got the mayonnaise jar in. And I've got mine. Or the canning jar.
And you see
It's
the
the
label
engineer.
says,
That's right.
did you make room for your rocks today?
Did I make room for my rocks today?
Remember that.
I'm going to put creativity
There you go. Yeah.
on my rock.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to ask myself every day, did I make room for my rock?
That's right.
And as
Beautiful.
I have put my first rock in my canning jar, I will keep you all posted on whether or not I have been true to myself in making room for my rock. And in the meantime, you figure out what your rocks are.
Absolutely.
All right, Barbara Spang Minisker, professor at the University of Illinois. Thank you for coming in for this episode of Health and Soulful, being heard live on 90.1 FM WEFT, and then you will see it Sunday evening on UPTV Channel 6, Channel 99 for you AT&T users. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You're
Renee.
listening to 90.1.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. I'm enjoying it already too. JoyfulU, joyful.u, not .u, sorry, joyful-u.org is the website.
Correct.
So yeah, so for more information, visit Barbara's website, joyful-u.org. And of course, her book is Joyful You, Discovering the Path to Success and Happiness, Mindful Living with Purpose and Resilience. You're listening to 90.1 FM, WEFT Champaign. I'm your girl, Renee Angela.